Hello, one and all, and welcome to the 2025 Breeders' Cup Deep Dive Handicapping Show. Nick Tammaro here from TwinSpires, joined by an esteemed panel of handicappers, bettors, and everyone else that wants to be involved in this. So you will see me, of course, in the top left corner of our small Brady Bunch quad box, as NFL Red Zone fans would probably call it. Immediately to my left, Eddie Olczyk. Eddie, welcome in. You'll be joining us. Joining the racing world on the NBC broadcast this weekend. What I wanted to ask you was, in your coaching and playing days, how important was being close to an OTB on Breeders' Cup weekend?
Let's see. Well, first off, great to be with you guys. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I've had a few technical issues here going on my end, so hopefully you guys can hear me nice, clean, and clear. I think silence is probably golden when it comes to. I got a chance to sneak away back in the day on maybe a game day. Maybe for sure when I was playing, I think I might have snuck out every once in a while, but never when I was standing behind the bench. And if I'm holding a microphone, there's a pretty damn good chance I'm somewhere playing horses now in my real gig after my playing and coaching days.
Man after our hearts for sure. So if you notice that Eddie is a few seconds delayed from when I stop talking, that's the FCC making sure that he hasn't said anything inappropriate. So don't worry about any of that. Below me is 2020 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge winner Marshall Gramm. Marshall, the question that everybody wants to know, in terms of 2020 Breeders' Cup replays, what have you watched more, Monomoy Girl or Authentic?
I probably have watched Authentic more, but I don't. I tend to watch replays of maybe my winners, whether it be a cheap nickel claimer, more than I've watched that race.
Well, won't change the fact that it helped boost you to a multiple $100,000 score. So congrats again, of course, 5-year anniversary of it. You wouldn't be the first one to win it twice. It has been won twice before. So why don't you just go ahead and do it?
Yeah, because 2020 is getting to be a long time ago, right? So it's about time that they make another little run.
Better to be a has-been than a never was. But Travis Stone is also joining us in the bottom right corner, the voice of Churchill Downs. Travis, first Breeders' Cup memory for you. Let's have it.
1995, it was pouring rain. My parents and our family drove down from upstate New York to Belmont. I didn't sleep the entire night before. My mom was livid. I woke up every 30 minutes. But I'll never forget when my flag caught Golden Attraction and Cara Raffaella right on the wire. And I was in. I was hooked.
30 years ago, of course, inside information with that blowout win in Cigar capped his perfect 95 season. So now you know everybody here a little bit more in depth, perhaps, than you did 2 minutes ago. And we're going to get right into the handicapping. So this is going to be somewhat informal in that I'll obviously ask everybody questions about these races. We're going to talk about the Turf, Classic, and Mile, and then each of the four of us will highlight one horse that we're looking forward to backing over the course of the 2-day event. I think we'll get a little representation from each day as well as we go through that. The $5 million Breeders' Cup Turf is the first race that we will take a look at on the agenda. It is obviously on Saturday afternoon, and it goes as race number 8. It'll kick off the late pick 5, the final pick 5 of the weekend. And we've got a pretty tremendous group assembled as expected when you're giving away this kind of purse. So, Eddie, I want to start with you. I'll start by asking you for or against Mini Hawk, and if against, who do you like?
Well, I mean, full disclosure, I think we all, as handicappers, we all have strengths and weaknesses. At least most of us do. I know what my weaknesses are. My weaknesses are on Friday in a lot of the European type of, and then also the long distance races where I've always seemed to have a difficult time of trying to, I don't want to say decipher the class difference between maybe the races over here or the races across the pond, but these type of races here, I try to watch where the money's going. I try to talk to as many people as I can, and I mean, it sure seems that Mini Hawk and Aidan O'Brien and Aiden's Army is certainly at the top of the list. And I always find it very challenging, and I'm not sure how you guys feel of the different types of classes of races that when you do get to the Breeders' Cup of trying to compare, a race at Saratoga, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a race over at York or the Curra. So I think I'm going to try. I think you have to use Mini Hawk, but I think that you have to be, if you're playing in some exotic races, trying to hit a double, maybe trying to hit a pick 3 or pick 5, maybe go 3 or 4 deep, Nick, and take your chances that maybe somebody doesn't trip out and somebody does, and then maybe instead of getting an 8-5 or a 7-5 home, maybe you get a 6 or 7 and a one shot. So I'll probably try on our NBC show to probably try to beat Mini Hawk, but I think the jury's still out on which direction I'm going to go in full honesty here.
Marshall, I think a lot of people are framing this as a 2-horse race, obviously, between Mini Hawk and Rebels Romance. Do you see it as that, or are you going to try and maybe look elsewhere for a little bit more value?
I think those are the two toughest horses. I sort of agree with Eddie on these type of races. This is a very tough race. It's sort of incomprehensible when we think about U.S. racing. The fact that this race is not only full of 3-year-olds, but that the prohibitive favorite is a 3-year-old filly, and she doesn't get the huge break in weight like she does overseas. But we've found one this race at Keeneland as a 3-year-old filly a decade ago. So we've seen this before. It's hard for us to imagine a 3-year-old filly coming out and winning the Classic, for example, or being prohibitive favorite. But her arc, I thought her run was really impressive. And when she was, and I thought she ran hard late. They opened up quite a good distance on the rest of the field. And so, her jumping from 3-year-old fillies in the Irish Oaks to older fillies in the Yorkshire Oaks to the Arc with Aidan O'Brien, I think she's going to be tough to beat. And so, probably I will focus on her. It's not one I want to be heavily invested in. I am kind of interested in Gold Phoenix underneath. I mean, I can't find any excuses with any of his races. He's always been a horse that's shown up on Breeders' Cup Day, has run well at Del Mar, 5-9 at Del Mar. This horse likes to run. Last year was the top finishing American. And, I don't think he can win, but he's going to be a big number, and, maybe king him in third behind Mini Hawk and some of the Euros. Maybe that's how I'm going to approach this race. But it's again, not one that would be, one I'm going to be too heavily invested in.
So, Travis, I wanted to ask you, walk us through a little bit of how you handicap a race like this, clearly trying to decipher European form. Are you really digging into a lot of replays, utilizing some speed figures that also have international capabilities, and ultimately going through that process? Where did you land?
Yeah, I do replays first, so I spent a lot of the time between races today at Churchill just watching replays and working through the careers of a lot of these European horses running this weekend. And in terms of this race and where that caused me to land is, I am going to take a small shot against her. I have tremendous respect, but I think there's some stuff going on here that makes this race a little bit interesting. For one, despite the fact it being 12 furlongs, I think there's a chance there's a very legitimate pace. Salawi is very quick. In fact, is almost rabbit quick, like has real keen early speed. And at a track like Del Mar, that can get very dangerous. And that can either cause them to gap out, or some horses they try and back down that pace and they get stuck wide. And I'm worried that Mini Hawk might get a little bit wide. My other read on her was that was a very stiff run in the Arc. It was a deep, tiring surface. They went toe-to-toe and dueled right to the wire. A thrilling race. Arc's one of my favorite races year-round. And I wonder, now you put her on a plane, you ship her around the world, and now you face some of the best again on an unfamiliar course with some scenarios that maybe works against her. I don't know if I really want to totally take a short price, but it's not like this is a huge stand against.
Eddie, did you have something?
Hey guys, I just want to make mention, I think people should understand is that that race that Salawi ran at Woodbine, that was almost 3 turns, because they've been running on the inner turf there since they shut down the EP Taylor. So that's something to take into the handicapping aspect of it, where the tighter turns on the inner turf at Woodbine. That's something that you should think about, not only this weekend at Del Mar, but when you are watching and betting on races that you see, maybe Woodbine shippers that come down, you got to check out when the exact date was when they stopped running on EP Taylor, the one-turn turf course up there. So I agree with Travis. I think the 7 is going to give Rebels Romance and redistricting. You're going to see those 3 numbers and names up there right off the bat, and the faster they go, I'm sure everybody sitting in the back seat are going to be awfully excited about that.
So no, I think that's a key point. Actually, the configuration ends up being almost identical to Del Mar. The stretch being a little bit longer, but it's a 7/8 surf course, obviously with pretty tight turns. All in all, which is noteworthy. And I didn't realize until Woodbine Mile Day that they were running on the inner turf, and looked at the PPs and was like, why aren't they running this on the EP Taylor? But alas, it does give you some, I guess, a little bit of indication what kind of stuff can happen here. So I'm going to make a case for the 3 Amalok. And this horse is coming out of a race that a long time ago I said to myself, when I can, I'm going to bet horses coming out of the Irish St. Ledger. I totally understand he's lesser. He has to run better. What we've seen, and 2 Breeders' Cup winners, yeah, they're getting to be a little while ago, but both Red Rocks and Conduit came out of the St. Ledger. That's a 3-year-old race run at 1 3/4 miles. I've always said I'm a sucker for cutbacks. Who doesn't love the 14 to 12 furlong cutback, right? So this is a horse that'll have no problem with staying power. I think he's helped by a fast pace. I like the connections that Rafe Beckett won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint last year, and is going to use Ross Orion, who gave Starlust an unbelievable ride that day. This is a horse that drew well on the inside. He's going to be able to sit back and make one run. I have all the respect in the world for Mini Hawk and Rebels Romance. I wouldn't really want to be beaten by either of them, but I have to bet Amalok to win in here and maybe try and get him on top in some of the exactas. Rebels Romance is a horse that I've probably underappreciated in many ways. And when you start to dig into the pace figures on this horse, he's won up close when it's fast. He's come from off of it when it's slow. He just absolutely buried that field in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic last time. And Frankie moved him probably 6 furlongs too early. And it just didn't matter. I mean, this horse is very, very good. He clearly loves fast ground. Obviously, if Mini Hawk is beaten, it's likely to be by him. But this is a horse who I think is probably even better than a lot of us are giving him credit for. Marshall, would you say that Rebels Romance and Mini Hawk, in your opinion, are on par with one another in terms of what you'd expect from them here?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think they're the 2 horses to beat. And Rebels Romance, again, he's done nothing. He's done nothing wrong. I mean, Mini Hawk seems more like the now horse, but I mean, Rebels Romance hardly ever loses. Has won in oodles of money. His Turf Classic was a glorified workout, and those are okay horses behind him, but he just destroyed them.
Yeah.
So I see no knocks, and I see no knocks. I'm thinking the filly might be the now horse, but yeah, I mean, look, the great thing is we have a 14 horse field. I think unlike a lot of these other races that we'll see, there are quite a few here which would really, really have to drastically improve to get in the number and certainly to win. I think that the difference in the gap between most of these Americans and the Europeans just seems to widen as we put less emphasis on real turf route racing, and so that in that way, even though it's a big field, it really, I think there's a smaller number of horses that might win this race compared to a lot of our other Breeders' Cup races over these 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big priced horses in here, and the Breeders' Cup caps the morning line at 30-1, with the exception of the Rabbit this year. Travis, Marshall brought up Gold Phoenix as an underneath type, knowing a little bit about how you like to play. I know you like to find a price horse that you could potentially slide in. Anybody stick out to you in here that could potentially fill that role?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a couple of points to add on to what you said, because I am too on number 3, Amalok. And no, Nick and I did not convene on our selections ahead of time. If you go back and watch this horse's early career races, he's overcome quite a bit in some of those early races. I think there's a lot of talent there. And the one thing I'd add is that it feels like this was their target, as opposed to just, we finished off our European year. Let's go ahead and try the Breeders' Cup. Instead, off that June race, they waited until September. Nice little sharpener for this. So I'm very much so on board. But yeah, my favorite way to play races is to key long shots and 3rd and 4th and superfectas and trifectas. And sometimes they run better than that and you can really score. And I think Gold Phoenix fits that to a bill. I think this race gets a little bit hungry late. And I think positions 3 and 4, and even maybe above that are kind of up for grabs. And I'm looking to take Gold Phoenix and a little bit of Wimbledon Hawkeye as well, who I think has really developed nicely as of late. I think both of them are fairly reliable closers in a race that's going to have some pace. It's going to be big prices. A little bit worried that Marshall mentioned Gold Phoenix, which tells me some other people are thinking about it too, because Marshall is indeed a bit of a sharp. So that's concerning that the price might kind of drift downward a little bit. But on the flip side, I think everybody is thinking Mini Hawk, and so I think her price goes down. So yeah, now I'm looking to kind of reverse, as I say, put them underneath Wimbledon Hawkeye and Gold Phoenix.
Eddie, anybody else you wanted to touch on before we make our way to the Classic?
No, I thought maybe El Cordobas looked interesting if they did go overly quick. I mean, how can you? I don't think you can ever turn down, Charlie Appleby. So that was one that I thought that if I felt that it was going to be a quick pace, it's going to be interesting how Del Mar is playing. Obviously, they open up Thursday, and then you got the big day on Friday, and then obviously the biggest day of them all on Saturday. So it'd be interesting to see how the turf course was playing. I know, just looking at some old notes from the last meet at Del Mar, they had quite a few days. I think they had 6 of 7 of the last turf days that I tracked. At least what I feel was very favored to forward horses. Where earlier in the meet, it seemed like it was the other way around. So we'll see. Can you get an idea of how the track is playing in 2 full days and get ready? Just say, because we're talking about Saturday, I think you can get an idea of it, but I would keep an eye on that. And if your speed is coming back in some legit races there, then maybe that's somewhere that you might lean. But I thought number 10 El Cordobas might be somebody interesting that I would use underneath probably in trifectas and exactas.
Yeah, I noticed. I think it was I don't remember who the interview was with, but Charlie Appleby went out of his way to say that people were sleeping on El Cordobas a little bit, and he was better than the chances that he was being given. I make a note to myself every Breeders' Cup at Del Mar to be very careful about betting horses that are going to need to make big, long outside moves and are going to come from deep in the pack, because I just think it's such a position-oriented turf course. But with that said, I've just basically made sure that we're going to have 8 off-the-pace horses over the course of 2 days. So let's move on, gentlemen, to the Classic, the featured race, obviously, on this tremendous Breeders' Cup Saturday. It goes as race number 9. Obviously, we'll start our conversation with Sovereignty being out. And no, I don't plan on us spending a great deal of time talking about a horse that's not running, but he obviously suffered a bit of a shipping fever, and Bill Mott mentioned it to the media yesterday. Unfortunately, his fever spiked again after he was treated with some antibiotics, and thus he will not be able to run. Hopefully he is recuperating. I'm sure he's being very well taken care of, and I'm sure many of us would ask for us to be as well taken care of when we have a fever as he is at this point, but hopefully we'll get to see the champ back in 2026. Alas, what that leaves us with is still a really evenly matched field of 9. I suppose an argument could be made, too, that it maybe is an even more competitive race without him, if you were of the opinion that he just really towered over these horses. We now have a 5-2 favorite in fierceness, and just kicking it around a little bit. Marshall, I know you were somebody we had spoken offline weeks ago who felt pretty strongly about Sovereignty's chances of winning this race. Does it affect your interest in betting, or have you already pivoted to somebody and you're like, line them up, we're going after it?
Well, I mean, I was excited about betting Sovereignty. I was excited to see him run, to see whether he could secure his place in history. I had, I sort of was working on the hypothesis that he was the best 3-year-old maybe since American Pharaoh. Who knows? We'll never know. I mean, it would have been interesting to see. But look, it leaves us with still a very compelling race. We still have the 3-year-olds against olders, and so I think there's a lot here. Does it make things, does it make it a less important race? Maybe so, but we've got a very competitive race, and I'm excited about betting it. I like Baeza. I am team 3-year-olds. My whole approach to this was I like the 3-year-olds, and I think he's going to be the price of all of them and the most tactical. I'm hopeful that he can be 10-1. I'm willing to say that I think he ran big in the Jim Dandy. I know that those that say Sovereignty wasn't even really cranking, went right by him. But if Sovereignty's a super horse, the Jim Dandy is a solid performance from Baeza. Maybe he moved forward in the Pennsylvania Derby. His speed figures, no matter what you look at, are compare well with the older horses. And I think he's going to fit. I think he's going to be tractable and hopefully fit Del Mar well. And again, is it going to be hopefully the longest price of the bunch? So that's where I'm going in what I think is now a more compelling race.
Dr. Gramm, always a fan of what goes on in the city of brotherly love racing wise, so no surprise there that his loyalty lands with Baeza. Travis, where are your hard earned dollars going in the Classic?
I mean, not to be lame, they're on Baeza as well right now. I tried to make a case for Antiquarian. We can talk about him briefly in a moment. The one thing I'll say about Baeza to sort of add to what Marshall said is I went back and watched the Belmont, the race where everybody kind of wrote him off as being, he's not even close to the top two. He's not even competitive. But if you watch that replay, if you remember, he tossed his head a little bit early. I think he got a little bit more out of position than he probably wanted to be. Then he was really wide on the far turn. And if you watch the last 16th or so, he was making up a little bit of ground. He was not stopping. I think he's a horse that has figured it out a little bit. I think whatever they did between the Belmont and the Jim Dandy was what they needed to do because he obviously ran his best race to date that day. And then his development since then has been awesome. And he's going to be a good price. He's back on the West Coast where he's done some of his best running as well. I think he's very much so live. Um, I I tried to make a case for a lot of these. I think I'm sort of over Sierra Leone as a top win candidate play. I went back and watched the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and even though he had to deal with Irad on the ground, the Rabbit still did set that race up for him. He was closing, but Antiquarian was a little bit closer to that pace. I think he a little bit outran him, to be honest with you. And I just don't think the price discrepancy is going to warrant the play. Would not be surprised if Sierra Leone wins. But Antiquarian would be my other creative idea. I'm just a little bit worried it's too creative now at, I don't know what, 10, 12 to 1. I thought he was really interesting at 20. And now I'm like, man, you're getting a little bit too cute. I think he's a capable horse. I think he's sort of on the come, if you will. But now the price might be a little bit on the short side. No, so anyway, I'm Baeza. I've got Knox against all the others, even though I do think Fierceness is the horse to beat.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up touching on the majority of the field, even if you guys landed on the same horse. Eddie, where are you heading in the Classic?
I'm just going to go one end to the inside. I'm going to go with Fierceness. I think he's going to get an incredibly great trip. If I can, I mean, obviously, it's very disappointing to not see Sovereignty be able to run, and because he just seemed like I thought journalism was breathing different air going into the Kentucky Derby, and certainly he wasn't as high up. He wasn't as high up in the clouds of Sovereignty, and you've seen what Bill Mott's 3-year-old Colt has been able to do in his short career. So hopefully he can get better, and we'll see him fight another day. But I just think that Fierceness is he, he the ability that what he showed in the Pacific Classic. Because in fairness to him, he's always been, I think, an easy target where people have said, well, he hasn't gotten a trip. He didn't get it his own way. He just packed it in, and if he doesn't get here, and he doesn't battle or whatever. Well, I think he proved to everybody. I think when you think about what happened in last year's Breeders' Cup Classic with Derma Sotogatki going absolutely crazy in the first half a mile in that race, and then running as well as he did in that race, and then just ended up getting beat by Sierra Leone that day. And I just believe is that he's gonna get the perfect trip. And coming off that last race, ideally, I don't think getting the rail. I mean, I think what's interesting now, right? It came down in the post position draw on, I think that was Monday. It came down to Sovereignty and Fierceness, and Sovereignty ended up getting number 6, and Pearson ended up getting back on the rail, and it's been well documented what happened to him in the Pacific Classic. So I think Johnny V will be ready for that. I think he gets a golden trip, and I think he gets to jump on the closer. So that's how I see it. And full disclosure, I mean, I'm going to be all in the tournament, in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, and in my own personal account. I'm going to be all in on fierceness on top, and I'm going to use two horses underneath. I'm going to use Sierra Leone the 7, and I'm going to use. I agree with you guys. I'm going to be Baeza. I'm going to try to eliminate journalism and Forever Young, and I'm going to try to hit an exact either 1-2 or 1-7. And if that's the case, then we'll have to back up the wheelbarrow because I'm going all in on that one.
A lot of Baeza love here, and apparently what's become the John Sheriff's Appreciation Corner. But yeah, I think the important point that you made about fierceness is that he is a horse that has justifiably been tagged as being one that kind of only showed up when he was able to play his game until the Pacific Classic. Again, I think that's a key race as far as him showing some maturation and a step forward that I didn't really know he had in him. And finally you saw him not really get a good outside stalking trip, have to get behind horses. He had his little thing early that people have overrated, but it was noteworthy. And when Johnny V asked him around the turn, I mean, he just absolutely inhaled everybody and went on with it. I think there's an argument to be made that as good as this horse is, he could possibly be a little bit better at Del Mar. I mean, there's a case to be made for that. I don't really know how much it matters. He's a good horse, period. And I think he really gets the run of this race. I find a lot of the, whatever word you want to use to describe it, but the conversation about the rabbit to sort of be ridiculous, because the rabbit's going to be in his own race and fierceness is basically going to be leading the rest of the pack, which is a pretty coveted position all in all. I think he's clearly the horse to beat. I love the idea of taking a mid-range price like Baeza, who, probably ends up around 8 or 10 to 1 when all is said and done. I do think a lot of people are going to hone in on a great deal of what both Marshall and Travis said in terms of making a case for him. But one thing I wanted to get you guys both to weigh in on, because I really think there are, other than Baeza, and fierceness, there are probably 5 other legitimate contenders, and Travis only mentioned Antiquarian. The 2 7-2 shots, Forever Young and Sierra Leone, these are horses that are really difficult reads to me in this race. Obviously, Sierra Leone has sort of earned himself kind of a bad reputation on social media and everywhere else because he's lost a lot, right? When you have a style like him, you're going to lose a lot. You're going to need a lot of things to happen for you in order to run well. Forever Young is the toughest read in the race to me by far, given the 2 races he's run. He ran earlier in the year, how great he was in the Saudi Cup, how dull he was in Dubai. But they've done the same thing they did last year, which was get him to a prep in his native Japan. Which of these 7-2 shots, Travis, I'll start with you, do you think is A, more likely to win, and are you backing either one?
I'm just taking a stand against Sierra Leone in a spot like this. With the huge setup he had last year, it's not like he won by 5. He only beat Fierceness by a little bit less than 2 lengths. And I don't really know if he's moved a ton forward. Forever Young is, in my opinion, a tremendously tricky read and is going to be all based on price. I do think there's a lot of quote wise guys are going to gravitate toward him. He's a known name. He's a Derby horse, a former Derby horse, so he's got a lot of popularity. I just don't like the long layoff one prep into the Breeders' Cup. And I've looked at a lot of data over the years of horses second off the layoff. They tend to get overbet relative to their performance and their ultimate outcome. And I'm kind of hanging my hat on that a little bit if he's going to be 3-1, 7-2. If he's forgotten, for example, and drifts, I might become interested because he is a proven commodity. He didn't run all that bad last year. This year has been a little bit more in and out. But he's certainly capable of bouncing back. I don't love the second off the long layoff pattern in a race like this. This is a very tough heat. You have to be 110% to win this one. There's no wiggle room.
Marshall, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young, where do you stand?
So I see Sierra Leone a lot like Travis does. I think he's a horse that Del Mar doesn't fit really well, and I know that's weird to say post him winning the Classic last year, but he got a great setup with a tremendous pace that was set. But Del Mar doesn't really, deep closers, a 946-foot stretch. I just don't think it fits his style, and I don't see Lightning striking twice. The other thing is I think because there's so clearly a rabbit this year that everyone's going to be thinking fast pace, and we probably won't get it. Right. And so I think that it's more likely to hold together, and that's going to put him in a bad position. So I would lean towards Forever Young, but he also just strikes me as a bit of a grinder and one who's not really suited towards Del Mar. He ran great last year, was close to the pace, really came running again. but he just strikes me as a horse that can run forever and may need more distance, not this sort of very tight mile and a quarter at Del Mar. So I am I would to answer your question to be forever young, but I'm probably against both of them.
Eddie, you mentioned that you'd be using Sierra Leone under Fierceness in addition to Baeza, so I'm guessing your affinity among this pair of Forever Young and Sierra Leone would be a little more in his direction. Care to share maybe a little bit about the why there?
Well, I mean, I think of understanding that Sierra Leone is proven at Del Mar, and Gramm makes a great point of Marshall makes a great point of just the aspect of the short stretch at Del Mar. But I think the pace is going to be. I think the pace is going to be more than honest, and I think that if Sierra Leone and Flavian Pratt can make that move as early as he did the last time, he has every chance to be running by those horses that are turning for home. So Forever Young, I mean, I don't know. If you're playing trifectas and something, which I probably will, I will use him second and third just in case he beats somebody, and he might be whatever, if he is the new morning line, of 7-2 is, I don't want to have somebody that's maybe 7 or 8-1 finish third and miss out on it. So I respect Forever Young. I mean, it is a very competitive race, but for me, I'm a big believer of horses for courses, and I think you have to use Sierra Leone because I think most people I would argue, I shouldn't speak for anybody, I'm not, but I think it's going to be an honest pace, and I want to know, and I know that Sierra Leone is going to be running again. Will it be too late? We're going to find out, but I would bet more yes that he would hit the board than no. And I'm meaning, second and third as far as hitting the board.
No, that makes perfect sense. So I was born to be a contrarian, so I'm going to offer a conflicting viewpoint on some of the things that have been said. I think the setup thing from last year's classic is overrated. Number one, the pace didn't come back at all. So those numbers might look fast. The pace figures don't really bear that out. The other thing I would say is he was in third at the half mile pole, basically. Like he moved way earlier than he has in any other race where he's put in a meaningful run. Like juxtapose last year's classic against this year's Whitney. I think what I'm probably getting at is he's probably a slower horse now early, which is a problem, but he was really sharp in last year's classic. I don't think that version of him has ever really surfaced again, and I'd be worried that it even exists, but I don't think he won last year because he got some big setup. I think he took what he had always been good at and did it better, if that makes any sense whatsoever. The problem that he runs into this year is that there's just nobody to force things along, right? And I think two races are going to be going on. The fictional race where the rabbit is leading it, and then the race with everybody else. And I don't think the pace in the race with everybody else is going to necessarily be good enough for him. I do feel like, though, and this might not be popular with a bunch of people, I think he and Fierceness are basically on the same level talent-wise. Like, I don't think there's much separating them. That's why they've exchanged results on a number of occasions, and you're probably supposed to take the longer price of the two. There's not going to be a big discrepancy, but, and I know in a way I'm sort of talking in circles, but I think a lot of the holes that people poke in Sierra Leone is because he laid all over horses as a 3-year-old, and he lost, and he lost, and he lost, and he lost over and over, and he really only showed up twice. Right? He showed up in this year's Whitney and last year's Classic, and that was it. And I think there's a lot of stigma that's getting attached to that. But I do think he's an underappreciated horse in terms of his style is hard to win dirt route races. It's hard to come from deep in the pack over and over and run that great. So that's just my soliloquy on Sierra Leone, who I think is as likely a winner of this race as Fierceness. I really put them together in many ways. Perhaps I'll be proven wrong. It happens quite frequently. So one of the things that I wanted to ask all of you about individually is, to me, Forever Young is the biggest challenge from a handicapping perspective. The most difficult horse to form an opinion on is Mindframe, in my opinion. I don't like that we have not seen this horse basically run a complete race in 4+ months. I think talent-wise, he's up there with anybody in here, if not more talented. But he just seems like a really hard horse to bet, especially at 6-1. What do you think of that, Marshall?
Yeah, I don't know what to I don't know what to make of him, and I'm going to I'm going to let him beat me. I mean, effectively, he hasn't run a race in months, and so I do think there's we talk about this race holistically. We have this rabbit, then we have the other speed horses are these three Pletcher horses, and so much like situations where we see one trainer has a lot of the field, they're good. They're not going to go three of them at the leader or three of them head to head. So there'll be, there should be some positioning involved, especially with two of them owned by Rapoli. So again, that does make you wonder about the pace and where they'll each be. But back to mind frame, just not for me at the price, right? I mean, he may win this, but there are too many question marks for me.
Travis, it's totally unfair we're watching this replay without audio, but we can't have it in the background. You did call this race, the Stephen Foster, which he won early this year. This is basically the last time we saw him. Obviously, it was 1 1/8 miles. It looks like Sierra Leone's getting to him a little bit, but he ran very well. You give him any shot Saturday?
I agree with what you said that I think he's probably pound for pound, perhaps the most talented horse in the race. I wanted to see a prep off that Chocolate Cup Gold Cup. Um, I'm surprised Todd Pletcher didn't ask me or ask you what he thought he should do with a horse like Mindframe.
I missed his call and couldn't get him back.
I sent him to voicemail. Anyway, I really was hoping to see a prep so we could get a better gauge. The one thing I've heard about Mindframe that I don't buy into whatsoever is that he might not be a 10 furlong horse. And everybody just seems to forget when he was getting to Dornoch in the Belmont 2 years ago. Like he was truly making up ground late. And by the way, as a very lightly raced, inexperienced horse. He probably is, of all the horses in this race, if you were to win this race by 2, would you be totally shocked? No, because I think he's got a world of talent. It's just probably not going to be with my money. Now, again, price dependent. Let's say everybody has the same opinion and Mindframe's up on the board at 10-1. I'm probably a little bit more interested, but we'll just have to see. But that would be my take.
I think he'd win in the category, in my opinion, of the horse I'd most like to send my mare to, because I think he could be a very interesting stallion. But we'll let Marshall decide on that. Ultimately, he's the only one who's bred horses in this foursome. Eddie, what do you think of Mindframe's chances? I know you've given us already your bet, and you've been very forthright with it, and we appreciate it. But any consideration given to Mindframe?
No, because if he would have had a prep, I probably would have played Fletcher exactly, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think he would have answered a lot of questions. I really wish he had just run him in the Woodward or the Lucas Classic. I think how each of them played out, he would have won very handily based on the winning speed figures and the way those races unfolded. So it is just a little bit unfortunate. I don't want to pay short shrift to Journalism, who was the Kentucky Derby winner, and I think is a horse that amazingly is kind of not getting talked about at all in this race, and he's otherwise been really good. And he's had this incredibly admirable campaign. Travis, you and I were talking a little bit about this earlier today. I think there'd be a lot of satisfaction that goes into seeing Journalism win. It just, I guess, how much luster did he lose in that Pacific Classic? And was it enough for you to say, yeah, he's just not at this level?
It's funny you say that because when we were talking earlier and the replay was up, he did make a move. It wasn't
Oh, yeah.
like it was just sort of flat. He was a little bit out of position relative to fierceness, and he had to go wide. I do question whether or not he truly wants to get 10 furlongs. And this is no knock on Rispoli, who's a very talented and capable rider, obviously. But maybe a change of scenery to maybe a little bit more of an aggressive rider like Jose Ortiz will suit this horse a little bit, and maybe they're able to find a little bit more with him. And it's interesting as we have this conversation, I'm actually wondering of all the horses if he's the one that gets forgotten and then suddenly is no longer getting bet on, because he has lost to a lot of these before. Sovereignty's not in the race anymore, so maybe he's the one that starts to drift a little bit. But yeah, he's a tricky read. I mean, he is such a beautiful mover. You have to think that there's still something there that he can offer. And like you said, it's an admirable campaign. And you mentioned Nick, and I didn't think it was a not nothing point. This is the first time he's coming into a race with a bit of a freshening. He's run quite a bit this year, and he's been freshened up for this. So there's a few different things going on that might favor him a bit.
Yeah, and it crossed my mind as well that the connections could have just as easily not run him in the Pacific Classic, run him in a race like the Goodwood, and had a little bit more time between the Haskell and the Goodwood. But this gave them more time between the Pacific Classic and the Breeders' Cup. And if anything, I'm sure it was unintentional. They helped their price quite a bit by losing to Fierceness the way they did. Marshall, what does value to you on a horse like Journalism look like? Could he even offer any, in your opinion?
I think he could, and I'm with Travis. Really, when we think about mind frame, Baeza, Journalism, there's like if they get lost in the betting, they could be a play. None of us like mind frame at 6-1 with the question marks, but if he were 12-1, that's a different story, right? It's a different story based upon prices. We're willing to forgive things like not a prep race, and Journalism, especially I think with Sovereignty in the field, I really was certain was going to get lost. I love the fact that he's coming off now a 2-month layoff, a long freshening. A lot of horses move forward. A lot of 3-year-olds like this could move forward, could develop more, and at the right number, he'd be a play. I don't love him at 5-1. I think he's sort of huge variance. I wouldn't be shocked if he won. I wouldn't be shocked if he's so far off the pace and finishes sixth. Right. So I'm not. It's just hard to tell what kind of race he's going to run, where he's going to be position wise. Nothing would surprise me with him at the morning line at 5-1. He's not for me, but if he were to drift up, he would be interested in me. I also, I kind of like him underneath. I could see using him a little bit underneath, but at 5-1, he's too short at a win, too short of a win price if that's where he ends up.
So let's say you're in a good position in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. We're getting down to the final 4 races. How are you playing this? You don't have to be as specific as Eddie in saying exactly what you're going to bet, but how are you playing this race, Marshall?
Well, it kind of depends on where I am and what the prices are, but I won't go all in on Baeza. But if he's standing there at 10-1, and I can make a substantial move with him, it's such a good price. The nice thing about having a price horse that you like, horses 10-1, $5,000 at 10-1 puts me at 50, and then gives me a lot of options into the last 3 races. And so in some ways, I see my Breeders' Cup play, at least one of my tickets, beginning in the Classic, not ending in the Classic. Because then you have 3 more races to open things up where you might have some ideas. And again, you start with Baeza, put 5 of my 7,500 there, get up to 50,000. Then you have a lot of ways to work. So that's the great thing about liking a price. There's less of what you need to make your goal. So that's where I'd be looking. Maybe I'd play some, and certainly play some exactas with Baeza, with Journalism underneath to try to even make that payout bigger. So that's at least kind of what I'm thinking right now. But probably the Classic will be the start of my day, at least on one of my tickets.
Eddie, you mentioned you're going to go all in on Fierceness. Would you take 2-1 on Fierceness?
Yes.
Okay. That was what I expected. Well, I think we covered all our bases there, guys. Is there anybody else? And I appreciate you keeping it succinct. Otherwise, we could have gone on and on. But anybody else? I know we touched on Antiquarian a little bit. Travis did, so I didn't think we left anybody out. Nevada Beach obviously is going to be a big price. He's not impossible, but he's a horse I think that clearly has some talent. Is going to be moving forward. I would take futures on him in the 26 Breeders' Cup Classic if possible, depending on what we get next year, of course, with the 3-year-olds. But he feels like a horse that's going to get a lot better as time goes by. So let's move on to the mile. And I will say before I get into that, $10 Breeders' Cup bet back, as well as the Breeders' Cup betting guide available at TwinSpires. The $10 bet back on selected races. Get $10 in bonus bets for horses that you bet to win that run second or third. Most of mine do, so I would be able to really rack up the bonus bets there. And of course, the Breeders' Cup betting guide is available at TwinSpires. An in-depth look at all 14 Breeders' Cup races that, of course, will begin on Friday in race number 6 on the Friday program, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. Well, the final of our 3 scheduled races that we're going to talk about before we get into some individual races is the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I got to tell you guys, I've seen some wide open editions of this race. This, to me, is arguably as wide open as any I've seen. I know we have a 5-2 morning line favorite. I think there are a lot of holes to poke in him, that being Notable Speech. I thought this race was just tremendously interesting. And Travis, I'm going to let you lead off by taking us in the direction that you plan to go for this Breeders' Cup Mile.
I thought this race was exceptionally tough. I think if I look at this lineup of horses, There's about 10 of them that I think can win, and the other three would be surprising, but not totally off the charts. I, I don't know what the pace is going to do in here. I think that's a legitimate concern, and I really tried to make a case for the outside horse to bust out of that gate, get over to the inside, and forget to stop. I felt like the replay was a little bit weak in its most recent races. And so, given that, I feel like the pace might be a little bit murky. I'm going to take a bit of a closer as my top pick, and that's the 10, Jonquil. I'm not sure
Jonquil.
how it's said. Yeah, I have PTSD from the race at Keeneland because some friends and I needed program trading for a real nice pick five. Anyway, if you look at the three horses coming out of that race, Rhetorical, Program Trading, and this horse, why is this horse so much worse than the other two? Really had a stout late kick with a little bit of a wide trip going into the first turn. I thought Rhetorical got the run of the race. I'm against him. It probably would be one opinion I'm going to take to this race. Certainly respect him and can win. I don't despise Program Trading. I think he's a major player. He'd be an A for me in this race. But if you watched his stretch kick, that's the horse on the far outside I'm talking about. He's gaining he's gaining two to their one. That's a legitimate late kick. He was way out of position. He's one I'm most certainly interested in. I mean, I've got some others. I don't know how much you want me to rattle them off. I am going to use the Japanese horse, who I think is really interesting. And I asked a friend who kind of gets involved with numbers in terms of both domestic and international, believes in them all. And if you believe in them, the 9 Argine is very much so in the mix in terms of speed. And that horse could be a real price. So yeah, those are the kind of the two that I'm leaning toward with a little bit of program training. I'm going to take a stab against Notable Speech. Certainly can win. It's going to be a short price. Not entirely convinced that he's as good as he was last year. The numbers this year, I mean, even though he won last time, he ran very well. The number wasn't as quite as stout. And this is just an evenly matched competitive group. And I want to take prices, and I'm finding them all.
Yeah, I think on Tuesday, I taped a segment for TwinSpires with Matty Plale, a really heavy look at some of the European invaders. And Matty made the point that I think is important about Jean Kill, which you just did as well, Travis, is that he was out of position last time. He was way too far back.
Mm-hmm.
He's not supposed to be nearly that far back. And getting his regular rider, Colin Keane, with all due respect to Dylan Davis, I think having Colin Keane on board is definitely going to help a great deal. Now, he has a different trainer, same owner situation with Kirat on the outside, who is actually a horse that is at his best going forward. And so you almost wonder if each of them respectively doing what they're best at might complement each other's running styles perfectly, because Kirat was a huge upset winner of the Sussex earlier this year at 150 to 1 in wire-to-wire fashion. I don't quite think he'll be 150, but he'll be up there this time around. So you touched on, obviously, some of the principles in this affair. Eddie, where are you headed in the Breeders' Cup Mile?
Well, I'm hoping I'm alive from the Breeders' Cup Classic into the Turf Mile, and I'm going to eat chalk. I was up at Woodbine for Notable Speech's run in the Woodbine Mile, going 2 turns, and visually, I thought in person. That's probably why I'm probably hook, line, and sinker. I thought it was just absolutely an impressive finish, as we're watching right here on the outside with William Buick. I thought had plenty of more left in the tank. I don't want to say, look, the field was good. It wasn't anything outstanding. Let's just call it what it was. But do I want to say it was a tune-up? Yeah, I guess it was probably an appetizer getting ready for this race on Saturday. So for me, I'm probably going to end up picking Notable Speech. I'll take 7-5. I'll take 8-5, whatever it ends up being. But the one horse I think is really interesting is the New York bred and number 11 Rhetorical. This horse just seems to be going to a different level here, and I think will definitely be a horse that I will use underneath second and third, depending on how I end up playing this race. And I know the morning line of 5-1, and I think you're going to get every bit of 5-1. I don't know what you guys think on Rhetorical, but because it seems like in a lot of these races, the European influence will take a lot of money, so maybe some other prices will be inflated a little bit in a positive way if you like it. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it. If I can get anything north of 9-2 or 5-1 on Rhetorical, I will certainly be using as well. But I'm going to eat the chalk in back-to-back races, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Marshall, kind of a two-part question for you. Not only, of course, who do you like in the mile, but the Coolmore Turf Mile. Travis touched on it. Eddie just mentioned it as well as a key prep for this race. Who's the horse that you'd be looking to take out of there from kind of a trip handicapping perspective, letting pace influence it a little bit as well? So who, again, would you take out of the Coolmore Turf Mile? And more importantly, who do you like in this race?
So I'm with Travis that I thought John Keel ran the best race. I thought the Rhetorical had a great trip. So those are the two main notes I came out of it. That John Keel, again broke from the 11 post, was wide, and then made one big late run. So he's the horse out of that race that I would prefer of all those horses. I'm gonna go local, and I'm gonna stay in California. I'm gonna go with Johannes. I'm hopeful that I get 8-1. I can't quite figure out his 4-star Dave. Seemed like a lot went wrong that he may have even self-inflicted in that race. His other races this year have been strong. Last year he translated his California turf form into the Breeders' Cup Mile with a big effort there. And I just see this the same way. In his last prep race, I thought he was finishing with alacrity. And it just seems to set him up perfectly for, I think, another big effort here. A year more mature. I like Rispoli on the turf, and so he's a horse at this price. I feel very comfortable with, and I feel very comfortable with making a decent sized play as well. I think this is an interesting, fairly wide open race. I do totally respect Notable Speech, but at the price difference. And I think Notable Speech will be all of that 5-2, if not shorter. I'm gonna go with Johannes and maybe look for some other price horses as well. I did think also that the Japanese horse was just intriguing. We go from a year where last year Japanese horses were all the rage to where this year they might not get bet at all. It's just it's interesting how we're quick to jump on the trend and then jump off it. And in this one, it seems to be maybe the one of the most talented ones they brought here outside of, I'm Forever Young. I don't even count, right? Because he's competed internationally. So
yeah, he's been naturalized.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. I think Johannes is incredibly interesting. And as much as I wanted to kind of tag him as not as good as last year, the City of Hope Mile was every bit as good as the best races he ran last year. So I went back and watching it and thought to myself, draw a line through the 4-star Dave. He got beat up around the turn, totally out of position. It is the ultimate throwout race. I thought he bounced back very nicely, and he's just been too good locally to be overlooked in here. I like Salon in this race, who comes over from France for Francis-Henri Griffard, who's in the middle of an unbelievable year. And this is the kind of horse, Travis alluded to it a little bit with Amelot earlier in the turf. This is the kind of Euro I want to bet, right? This feels like a horse that is now getting to his destination. And his win last out in the Prix de Milan de Longchamp, which is a race that over the history of the Breeders' Cup Mile has been very influential in terms of turf of European invaders that have run well. It was a sustained bid from off the pace. Now, one of the problems he's going to have undoubtedly is similar to what a lot of them in here will have, in that he's going to have to make up a lot of ground. And there is not an overwhelming amount of pace in here. It looks a little bit like the 21 mile, where Smooth Like Straight was trying to wire and Space Blue sat second and just wore him down. If that's the case, then obviously I'll be in big trouble with Salon. But I'm thinking that this far out, with people talking about the pace, there are going to be some jockeys that maybe alter a little bit of their running style, and I think that could be enough. Salon also doesn't have to be that far off of it. I do think they'll outsprint him to an extent early, but he exits that race. So too did the Lion in Winter, who is going to break one door to his outside this time around. Aidan O'Brien's 1 for 29 lifetime in the Breeders' Cup Mile. It's sort of an unbelievable statistic. And ironically, the only winner was Order of Australia at about 10,000 to 1 in the 2020 Breeders' Cup Mile, a race that I'm sure, en route to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge victory, you did not hit the mile. Marshall, I can almost be certain of that. So, yeah, we'll see if the Lion in Winter can run a little bit better. He's got a little bit of speed. I did want to ask you guys, pace-wise, I mean, we're guessing on a lot of these Euros. Obviously, Kirat has a lot of speed. The 13 probably doesn't give him a whole lot of options. He's going to have to go. Are you worried at all pace-wise? Obviously, Marshall, you like Johannes. You're probably not that worried. You like him a little bit better in a slower-paced race, right?
Yeah, I think he's a super trackable. I think, look, it's a big enough field that someone's going to have to someone's going to have to go. So I'd be just shocked if it were a crawl. I just like it's just a numbers game with these horses, whether they want to go or not. With 13 of them as they hustle for position. So I think the pace will be honest. Will it be fast? That's a different question, but I think it would be honest. I'd be shocked if they crawled around the track.
Eddie, one thing I'm sure you noticed being at Woodbine for the Woodbine Mile is Godolphin had taken a couple of losses on that card already in the 2-year-old races where it felt like William Buick had a little too much to do. He noticeably got after Notable Speech early to keep him closer. I would imagine that makes you feel even more confident coming into this.
Yeah, 100. I think a particular day, the 13th of September, on the Interturf course at Woodbine, that was the place you wanted to be. I mean, he got into the right part of the racetrack, which probably about 3 or 4 off the rail, and just absolutely again. I think he just was well in hand, and but again, I think I don't want to say turf at Woodbine and Delmar are similar, but I mean, it is. I mean, the tighter, the tighter type of turns. I think he proved that he can certainly handle that, and then he can get moving on those. He was starting to move as they were starting on the turn, so I think that that's an opportunity to get accelerating and be able to, to scramble home. The one thing I will say, I think Jose Ortiz on Gas Me Up will be right there, because when you go back and watch that race coming from the outside in the Woodbine Mile, he did get to the rail, and I mean he ran his eyes out there on not the greatest part of the track. So I think that when you talk about the pace of the race, I agree with you. I think it is a little murky. I don't think it's going to be lightning quick, and I don't think they're going to be walking, but I think you're going to see some jocks get a little aggressive because I think they probably see what we see. But I think Gas Me Up will be one of those. I'd be shocked if Jose Ortiz is not first or second there when they break under the wire for the first time.
Travis, you mentioned a 10-1 shot that you liked in John Kill. Formidable Man is a 10-1 shot that has an unblemished record at Delmar. Is this one of those where we look back a couple of seconds after this race and realize this horse is just a little bit different at Delmar? He doesn't look good enough, but it has gotten beyond just a curiosity that he's this good at Delmar, right?
Yeah, and he's run very well in each of them, and overcoming some suboptimal paces in his most two recent races, in my opinion. I feel like they might be a notch below. But there also does seem to be a theme with this race that it's a little bit even and open, and that opens the doors for a lot of horses. I'm going to look at him. I don't like him at 10-1. I need more on him. I mean, put it this way: him at 10-1 versus Johannes at 8-1. It's not even close,
No,
right?
no.
I mean, it still doesn't work for me. The only other one that a big long shot I thought One Stripe ran well at Woodbine. Probably needed that race and could maybe come on for a little bit of a piece as well at huge odds, but. That's a bit of a stretch. I think the ones we've talked, I think we've hit on the major players.
Yeah, I heard Graham Motion tell Michelle Yu that he felt like he probably chose too tough a spot for One Stripe to make his North American debut, but did think that he would not only be more involved this time around, I believe he used the word tickled with the draw, which is something that people of the English persuasion would probably use as a descriptive word. Guys, I think we covered just about every base here. Anybody have anything else they wanted to add on the mile? All right, well, now we'll get into some of the individual races that we're looking forward to most. And I'm going to start by having Eddie tell us about the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint that will go as race number 5 on Saturday afternoon. Eddie, who do you like in the Turf Sprint?
Well, I think we would agree. There is a lot of speed.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm gonna go back in the archives here. I was all over Arizona Blaze last year in the juvenile turf sprint, and didn't have the greatest trip, but ran really well at 27-1. So I got to go. I got to go right back. I went to Arizona Blaze Inter going 5 furlongs, sitting behind the pace. I think could be tackled. It seems that he has been much more closer to the pace as he's gotten a little bit older. Obviously, last year he was 2. Now he's 3. Some of his races he's much more forward, but I don't think that the quickness right out of the gate to be up there with a couple of the horses that I think are going to be front. So not 27-1 this year, but I will take every bit of 5-1 on Arizona Blaze and try to pick up the pieces. I guess I'm probably happy that Motorius ended up getting on the inside because I think it's going to be difficult to be able to, swing out and make the big move. But I'm worried about Motorius. I am. So I feel a little bit more confident Arizona Blaze being in a good spot. So that was one of my stronger plays. I would put that right up with fierceness of how I feel and how I am going to attack the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, which is race 5 on Saturday.
5-1, and you remind us of your ability to find a horse at a decent price. I think 5-1 would be fine on him. I like him as well. Thought that Flying 5 was a really big bounce back race, and Matty Plale brought that up on the show we did the other day. Marshall, any thoughts on the turf sprint?
No, I'll be watching it, but I will not. I will not be betting it. These are tough races. A lot of fast horses. One mistake by a jockey or one stumble and it's over. So again, nothing jumps off the page to me. And the one thing about betting the Breeders' Cup, it's just as good not to bet a race that you don't have any you don't feel you know anything about, right? So that's one I'll enjoy watching, but I probably won't have a dollar through any horse.
Watching the replay back of this race last year, the winning rides, the top 3 rides on those horses on AG Bullet, Motorius, and Starlust. I mean, obviously there was a little bit less that the rider had to do with a horse like AG Bullet, but the rides on Starlust and Motorius were just unbelievably good. I mean, those horses are both on the rail, going around the turn. Starlust is last. That is, I will die on the hill of that being one of the greatest Breeders' Cup rides I've ever seen. That was incredible. Travis, are you getting involved in this turf sprint at all?
No, but I think it's worth noting what you just said. It's like if you go back and watch a lot of BC replays at Del Mar, that inside move is the move. We mentioned it today with Pizza Bianca. In fact, the jockey cam of Pizza Bianca is one of the coolest racing videos I think in the history of the
Oh,
game.
yeah.
You can see, and as a race watcher, you can actually feel the tension of like, what's he going to do from here? And he just commits to the inside. You pick up so much ground doing that at Del Mar. And for me, the race at the Tour Sprint, it's just so high variance. I think you run the race 100 times, you get a ton of different results, and I'll pass on it.
Yeah, it'll be a fun race to watch. Definitely one with plenty of intrigue, no question about it. Obviously, now we all have a rooting interest with Eddie looking to shoot up the leaderboard in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge with Arizona Blaze. Marshall, you wanted to touch on the Filly and Mare Sprint, the first Breeders' Cup race of the Saturday card, which goes as race number 4, and a pretty darn good race on paper in its own right, which I think is a lot more competitive than maybe that morning line would lead you to believe.
Yeah, I think there's a number of different ways to look at it. You could look at it maybe as a race where the pace will melt down and look for a closer. I think the Copian defection raises a lot of questions. I don't totally know what to make of Copian running in the sprint and what it means for Tammaro, what it means for Copian herself. I think that's an interesting issue. Copian showed no speed last time out, going 2 turns, and now they're cutting back to 6 furlongs. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they're running there. I'm wondering if there's an easier out. If they lose the sprint, it's no big deal. If they lose the Filly and Mare sprint, it's maybe more of a black mark against her. So it's just, I think the cutback and the fact she showed no speed last time is interesting. Or is she not running here because of Tammaro, because they want Tammaro to be in her glory? She's a horse that everyone has always wanted to be good, being out of Beholder. And so, look, her last race is great. I'm not sure who she beat. She ran a big number. Maybe if you work with the reasoning that Copian's a monster and they're clearing the way for Tammaro to win this race, or the Tamara's a monster, they're clearing Copian out and they're going for both races. I'm going to be anti-Tammaro. I think I'm moving in that direction, thinking that this is a little more hype than reality. I also just don't know about Sweet Azteca and getting the 7 furlongs under pressure. There's no doubt a horse like Hall and Ice is going to go. And there are other horses here that are going to want to be right up on the pace. Rishi, as well. So, I mean, if there are three really fast horses in Tamra, and Sweet Azteca, and then Hope Road's the third one, I'm going to go with the third one. And Hope Road hopefully is the longest price. I don't know whether, longest price on the morning line. Maybe that won't be the case. Maybe 4-1 is wishful thinking. But I think this horse is going to sit the right trip from the outside, being able to pounce on the dueling horses in front of her and hold off the closers. And so I'm going to take Hope Road and then maybe try to use one of the closers underneath at a price. I mean, like even Vava at 12-1, Splendora, Zeitlos maybe even at 40-1 could hit the number if it should really fall apart. So I'm Hope Road here. I don't, again, like I'm saying, as far as Breeders' Cup betting challenge is concerned, I'll run some money through here, but I'm going to keep a lot preserved for the last four races of the card. This is just more of an interesting anti-opinion against some of the top horses here.
Eddie, did you have any filly and mare sprint opinion?
I agree with Graham. Tammaro to me will be a much use on all of my different wagers that I will have on Saturday. If I was picking, I probably would pick Hope Road on top, but I'll be playing a couple of gimmicks there. I see the race the same way that Graham does. He makes great point, so no reason to elaborate anymore. I thought with Hopian deciding to go into the dirt sprint, I think this opened up the door for the other Mandela, and I think that race in the Ballerina for Hope Road back in August was super impressive for me. So gonna bet a Baffert Mandela exacta, and hopefully get somewhere in that $14 to $15 range.
Got to be collectively 20 plus Breeders' Cup wins between those two trainers quite easily, I would think. Travis, what about your filly and mare sprint thoughts?
I'm all on the bookends here, but Zeitlos to the hoop somewhere. How does Zeitlos not get a piece of this? I mean, this race has to be insane early. You've got a bunch of one-way speeds, and B, a bunch of horses are going to press them from behind, and there's really nobody that wants to come from behind except for Zeitlos. So I'm all Zeitlos to the hoop somewhere. I am going to respect Praying though. I think Praying's a good horse, and I think she's coming around at the right time. While I think some of these others have questions, I like the post draw for her, and I love the rider. I think Johnny V is the perfect pilot for a horse like this. She's going to be a huge price. Might not be good enough. This might be a Breeders' Cup too soon for her, but I think she's second to last early and could easily sneak into the ticket as well. Yeah, I'm going Zeitlos somewhere. Zeitlos could easily win this race. And I'm also a little sour because I know that you did too. I bet her in Saratoga, and I still want that money.
Yeah, I sent in my picks today, and I picked her. I can't help myself. I have to bet the lone real closer in a race that's loaded with speed. And I love Joel getting on her. He's such a good fit for a horse with this style. I think the biggest thing I fear that we're going to run into is that one of these Baffert horses is going to stay close to the pace and stay on. And then we're not going to be able to run them down. So I'm going to have a bunch of Zeitlos under Hope Road, Ricci, and Splendora. I actually think those three horses are pretty close to equal on paper, and I think any of them can win. And the only other horse that I think is a real win shot is Tammaro. So I can use Praying and sprinkle her in a little bit, maybe in the second spot of a try. But yeah, I mean, I've even watching the TCA back, Zeitlos got into real trouble turning for home, had to angle in, still finished a little bit. Oddly, she's an off the pace horse, an off the pace sprinter that's a little bit better at 6 historically than 7. A lot of those 7 furlong races were earlier in her career, so I don't want to hold it against her. But yeah, I mean, I can't not use the biggest closer in a race loaded with speed because they're going to absolutely fly in here, right? I mean, Sweet Azteca and
Yep.
Hall and Ice next to each other, they have to go. I don't like Sweet Azteca. I don't like these by appointment only horses that run every, whether it's not 2 months, it's 10 months. And I just feel like those 2 Los Al races have really sort of seduced a lot of people. I know she ran fine in the Rancho Bernardo, but if she is in this race and she goes out and gets the lead and she fights all the speed off and she holds the late runners off, I'll happily lose my money. I cannot possibly envision that happening, and I would never take it at the price that she's going to be. But it's a fun way, obviously, to kick off the Saturday Breeders' Cup action. We have actually not spoken at all about Friday Breeders' Cup action, and there are 5 Breeders' Cup races on Friday. Travis, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Juvenile Fillies turf, and we have some bonus footage. Credit to the producer here, coming up, of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. Who are we talking about in there?
I find, the conversation about Precise is she's a borderline deity at this point. I mean, everybody has effectively said they're singling her, they're locked in on her. She loses, I lose, yada yada yada. That's a horrendous post position. And I'm going to credit my girlfriend Olivia for pointing this out. Sumion is the go-to rider for Aiden O'Brien, one of them for sure. And he didn't get on this filly until several starts into her career, and in fact rode other horses running against some of his horses. I think she kind of snuck up on them a little bit. And while she was spectacular in a few of her races, this is a tough situation. I mean, she's going to have to be exceptional. And I got to be honest with you, I think she's almost sub even money. I think she's could be even 4 to 5. That's how much people are talking about her. So the contrarian horse player in me wants to shop around a little bit. And I think Ultimate Love is going to get a little bit overlooked because the racetracks that she's been running at don't exist in New York. They don't exist in Kentucky, and they don't exist in California. She has been very good in virtually all of her races. Maybe a little bit against the track in some of them, overcoming some paces in some of them. And if you watch her stretch kick, she has legitimate late speed. And this is a beautiful post position. Juxtapose it against the complete outside post that the 4 to 5 favorite's going to have. She's going to be tucked inside with Johnny V. We've talked about the benefits of being down inside on this turf course. And numbers wise, I don't think she's that far off almost anybody. And I think she's going to offer value. And so to me, it was like totally respect Precise. At the end of the day, if I can't hit a pick 5 on Friday because Precise wins and I can't connect the right dots, whatever, we've got Saturday to go, and there's plenty of more opportunities down the road. But to me, this is the race. I am going to take a shot against Precise just because I think she's going to be an underlay. She is way, way, way the horse to beat. But that's a brutal post position. It's not a mile and an eighth. There's not a long run to the first turn for this. Get position, get it quick. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, the sheet numbers on Ultimate Love came back really fast, and you can sort of tell here around the turn of the Salima why, because she did make that prolonged 3-wide move. Some of the form coming out of here has been okay. The Brittany Russell also ran the Sweet Little Lila, came back and duplicated her speed figure next time out at Aqueduct, so I don't think there's anything to be terribly worried about. And again, as you alluded to, post position wise, it is pretty tough to argue with the inside draw for Ultimate Love. Marshall, do you have any opinion on Precise? And I know these races aren't really your cup of tea, but can you see yourself getting involved in the Juvenile Fillies turf?
No, I don't have a strong opinion, and it's a race that I would probably play a minimum if I play at all. But it's again in these kind of races, it's tough to take a short price horse. And so again, I'll be watching and either minimum or I'll pass along. I like the logic behind Travis's selection, and I think there's some decent prices here that could move forward and win this race.
Yeah, no question about it. Obviously, one of them, of course, being Ultimate Love, and I think we're going to get a little bonus footage coming up of Ultimate Love. So this is the workout from Fair Hill, which we were given by Mike Trombetta's assistant. That is Ultimate Love in the orange jacket. I'm glad that Blaze reminded me it was the orange jacket, considering one of them is a chestnut and the other one's a gray. He forgets I also call races, so I can definitely determine which is which. He's saluting me now as I bring that up, but yes, Ultimate Love is on the outside in the orange. And guys, this is actually a fun topic to bring up. I don't know how much any of you do it. I'm a very novice workout watcher, but I am finding myself watching way more workouts now that they're more readily available. Travis, have you integrated any of that into your handicapping approach for this year's Breeders' Cup?
I think part of the problem is everybody else is doing it now too. So I don't know if you can really get an edge. And let's be honest, these are however many races, 140 the best horses in the country, if not the world. Like they're going to look good because they are good. To me, workouts is always about comparing how they looked 3-4 works ago to how they look today in the context of their pattern and their form. But I really think you can get hung up on them unless you see what they do every single morning and you know their habits, you know their quirks, you know the trainer's style and what they're looking for. I think you're kind of wasting time. They're in this race for a reason, and it's because they're good and they're doing well. They wouldn't be in there otherwise. So to me, I'm a little bit, I'm punting on workouts.
Eddie, being a former professional athlete, you can tell us, right? You always gave it your all in practice, right? It was always just as much effort in practice as a game, right?
No.
That was a safe bet. No,
I
was
did.
a
I
heavy
did
favorite on
at
that
one
one.
point. I will say there was a time I was playing in Toronto, and we got our heads handed to us the night before. I think we lost like 7-2, and our coach at the time, the late John Brophy, we were practicing, and he called everybody in around a scrum after we got our heads handed to us the night before. So it was yelling and screaming. I know this is a G-rated show, so I won't say verbatim what he said, but he pretty much called me out and said, Olczyk, what's your problem? I go, I'm sick and tired. He goes, well, I'm sick and tired of losing. Beep, 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 beep. And then we got back to practice. Next thing you know, about 45 minutes later, we were drinking from the trough, So it was one of those where we call it backscated. I'll leave that to imagination. So yeah, that was one of the harder practices that I had in my 16 years in the show.
You needed it here and there, I'm sure. But well, that was a good look at Ultimate Love in the workout. And I mean, again, following up on a little bit of what Travis is saying, we don't see what she does normally in the morning. She blew the doors off that horse, right? We don't know anything about who that horse even was, but obviously she looked good. So yeah, it's a little bit like watching one game and making a determination about an entire team. And, it's like, yeah, you probably need a little more context than that. But there are a lot of workout related reports that are available for the Breeders' Cup. But I'm looking forward to this Juvenile Fillies turf. Aiden O'Brien, of course, we're not going to discuss it at length or really at all, but he'll also have Gstaad as the heavy favorite in the Juvenile turf a little bit later, who's breaking from post 14. He might not be quite as vulnerable because he has a little bit more early speed, but the pills were not friendly to Aiden O'Brien in Friday's races whatsoever. Well, the race that I wanted to discuss, now that each of you have brought up one in addition to the three that we covered, is the Breeders' Cup Sprint, which is on Saturday afternoon. It goes as race number 6, and a horse that I've been touting for quite some time is the 10 Ben Tornado. This is a horse that Travis called winning the Louisville Thoroughbred Society back in September. I will admit I never really had a great amount of affinity for this horse, and I was intrigued to see how he'd run in this race, and I thought he was outstanding. This was just, to me, everything you wanted to see from a maturing, later developing 4-year-old. He came back off the break. He was professional. I understand that there's the Skelly that runs at Oaklawn and the Skelly that runs everywhere else, but that race could have been at Oaklawn and he would have blown Skelly's doors off, right? I mean, he just left him for dead at the 3/16 pole, pulled away one nicely. Durante came out of there, ran fine in the Phoenix. Granted, Hear My Song didn't come out and run all that well. I don't think it matters. I think Ben Tornado was in an ideal spot, breaking from the 10. If I had it all, I would wish that Straight No Chaser and Madhouse were inside of him and he could kind of set up outside. But to me, this looks like one of the likeliest winners of the entire weekend and perhaps the likeliest winner of the entire Saturday card. I just love the way he's coming into it. From what I've seen of him on track, he's looked outstanding. So I would definitely make one of the focal points for me wagering wise on this card, Ben Tornado. Anyone want to chime in with a Breeders' Cup Sprint opinion and tell me why I'm wrong? I'd love to hear it.
I got nothing. I loved his race at Churchill. I loved him
Silence.
last year. Yeah, I think he's the one to beat.
Yeah, you liked him when the price was right, no doubt about it. Marshall, you were talking a little bit about Copian earlier and kind of wondering why she ended up here. Would you have liked her maybe with a better post? The rail seems tough to take with her.
I would have liked her in the distaff. I'd have liked her in the Filly and Mare turf. Maybe y'all have more insight in terms of coming out of a route race, not showing speed and then cutting back to 6 furlongs. That's not, I don't see it unless you see this race coming apart. And I don't think these type of quality horses are going to keep, in my mind, are going to keep running. So I'm with you on Ben Tornado. I feel very confident in him. And I think he may be, I think you may get 5-2 because Copian's numbers look great on paper, right? Copian has great sheet numbers, and I think there's a lot of buzz around her. I don't see it at all, and so I'm willing to be completely wrong on her. I'm just worried she's going to be too far back. I know even stretching, I get the cutback, but I just don't know what it means for a horse that showed no speed out last time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that 33 and change workout is going to get her ready because they're obviously needing to put more speed into her. No question about it. Eddie, any Breeders' Cup Sprint thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on a little bit earlier, but for them for Team Mandela to make this move, I think on the surface, at least for the last couple of days, and again, you hear a lot of things, you talk to a lot of people, we're having this live stream. Just on the surface, like for him to take her out of the filly and mare sprint where she would have been the favorite, right? Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
So, as we brought up earlier, I think Gramm, you made mention: are they taking Copian away from Tammaro, or are they taking? You know what I mean? Are they? You know what I mean? Like that. That's where that's where I'm kind of torn because I want to use the filly. I do, without a doubt. Like if the show right now I was on NBC right now, I probably would take the filly. I agree with you guys. That last race, you wonder why she didn't show any speed in that race, and yeah, she closed, but it was almost one of those like, why would they cut her back like this and not think that she would be very competitive against the boys in this race? Yeah, I guess I'm just throwing it out there against the wall and trying to, get inside the mind of a Hall of Fame trainer.
Yeah, it is tough. I kind of was pulling for her to run in the distaff. I actually thought her Clement Hirsch was definitely good enough, and I didn't think there was much between her and Seismic Beauty that day. So I would have bet her at 1.125. I'll tell you, I would have been more interested in betting her in there than I am in here. And I think Marshall kind of said that, and I totally agree. Especially the way that race looks like it's going to set up on paper. But this one, I think, will set up well for Ben Tornado, even with the speed to his outside. I think he's going to get a good trip from up close. I think there are some interesting late running types that can get a piece of it too. I think both Lovesick Blues and Nakatomi are going to be pretty decent prices that can fill in some of these exotics and what should be a really fun Breeders' Cup Sprint. Well, of course, we encourage all of you to wager along with this Breeders' Cup at TwinSpires.com. Gentlemen, it has been my pleasure. Remember the $10 bet back and the Breeders' Cup betting guide, both available at TwinSpires. So once again, thank you to the three of you for spending this Wednesday night with us and hopefully sharing some good insights for everybody out there. For those of you who sat through it, we admire you even more. Hopefully it was worth it, and I think it definitely was based on all the ground we were able to cover. Eddie and Marshall, good luck in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, of course. Travis, you have plenty of races to call at Churchill, and good luck there as well. I'll just stay quiet and do my thing on Saturday.
See you guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it. Thank you.
guys.
Appreciate it.
And once again, thank you to all of you for Eddie, Travis, and Marshall. Nick Tammaro here. Be sure to play along with us at TwinSpires.com. Take advantage of those promos. And until next time, best of luck.
Well, thank you all. That was great.
All right. Yeah.
Good stuff, guys. We'll see you.